We just weren't sure.
Yes, it's my fiance. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
So Shane just going to talk to you then?
Yeah, I looked down when I was there. Sorry.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. Breaking news in the Heidi Broussard case. A woman's body was removed from the trunk of a Nissan in the back of a house, in the back garden of a house in Bojack Drive in Jersey Village, Houston. It's around about 2.5 hours by car from the address where she was last seen, 744 West William Cannon Drive in Austin. So she was found basically 150 miles due east of Austin in Houston. One of the first reporters on the scene, and this was very late Thursday night going into early Friday morning. The investigation wrapped up at the scene at about 1:30, but it was reported at the time by Jessica Wiley that there were 24 officers, that's a lot, and agents from the DPS, Texas Rangers, FBI. But the thing that really gave it away was Austin police were at the home in Harris County. They told the neighbors that it was connected to an Austin missing persons case, which was also very noteworthy, and that they focused on a car, a silver car, in the back driveway. A lot of information is being posted on social media, rumors, names, associations. True Crime Rocket Science wants to be very careful naming people, making claims. We want to be very careful just to get the information and basically follow the police narrative from here on out, who's charged, who's arrested, and keep speculation to a minimum. In this episode we're going to deal with what is either very clear or certain or almost certain. Before we get to that, please like, share, subscribe, and let's get started. So tragically it does look like this disappearance has come to a unhappy conclusion, certainly in terms of the mother. Heidi Broussard is presumed dead. Her child, Margot, is presumed alive and, well, unharmed. I found some footage from, I think, a Houston-based media outlet, KHOU, which just shows the interest in the house in Bojack Drive. It's a house that's opposite Reed Elementary School in western Houston. Now, what's immediately obvious with what we're dealing with here is there's a silver Nissan, which is apparently belongs to a long-time friend of over 20 years. Some have said 24 years of Heidi's. There's also talk that this friend had a child herself. I think I heard somewhere that the child that she'd had died, and so this looks like the abduction of the child and then getting rid of the mother at face value. What's immediately clear here is that the Nissan wasn't parked in the driveway as usual. It was actually parked inside the back garden of this residence, and Heidi's body apparently in the trunk of the car. Now, we don't know whether Heidi was abducted alive from her own residence. We don't know whether she was abducted from the car. If she was abducted from the car, then it's difficult to believe that Shane was involved, but certainly it's also hard to imagine that she would have been abducted from the car alive and immediately put into the trunk. Not impossible, but the fact that she was found in the trunk suggests that she was either killed in the home and then put in the trunk. that makes sense. You'll notice in the overhead footage of the house in Bojack Drive, you'll notice the silver car parked on the wrong side of the driveway. There's kind of a wooden gate that you can also see behind the reporter, in images of the reporter. And in other coverage you can see all the blinds of that particular house have been drawn. Now, one could also say that the police drew the blinds to hold out the gaze of the media, or that the blinds were drawn before that. When we look at the blinds from the overhead shot, which is likely before the police arrived, it looks like two people are sitting on the porch. One looks as though they're holding something. The one sitting down looks like they're holding something, maybe not. The window to the left is slightly open. That window actually has visibility of the car, which is diagonally below it. The window that is directly above it probably doesn't have visibility of it, just because of that roof alcove kind of being in the way, but you can see the blinds all around it are drawn. I've heard some information that this house was empty, and that there was some talk that the house, the people inside the house were going to move. That may involve Shane Carey in some way or other, or maybe not. The fact that if they were moving, perhaps Shane was involved in the move, but that's pure speculation. In other footage taken by the media, you can see the crime scene tape around the perimeter, and you can see there's a lot of light shining in the dark, but onto obviously the vehicle that was parked in the back. In these images, you can see how all the blinds are drawn. It's still a little bit unclear exactly how one gets from the driveway into the back garden, and also just the overall layout of the house. I'm also not completely clear if that image of the silver car that I've seen on social media is the actual Nissan. The driveway behind it and the garage behind it doesn't quite look the same, does it? In any event, what we know from the footage is that the car definitely was parked kind of on the wrong side of the driveway, which is very significant. We also know that there was a significant distance between where Heidi was last seen and where she was finally found. And I think it's pretty obvious that Heidi never left of her own accord. It also seems as if the child was what the perpetrator really wanted. Something that I don't think I mentioned in either of the two episodes that I did on Shane Carey was that I found it interesting that Margot's surname was Carey, Margot Carey, and not Margot Broussard. I thought that was very interesting. I also heard a comment on social media where someone just said that if Shane was home and Heidi's car was home, then why would Shane think that Heidi was going to pick Silas up? And why didn't Shane simply go and look around the complex? Because according to Shane, he thought she was simply visiting a friend in the complex, so he had 5 hours to go and speak to this friend. Why wasn't he doing that? And so that is why I don't think Shane is off the hook at this stage. I've heard a lot of rumors about a polygraph and so on, but I don't want to speculate on that. The only area that I'm willing to speculate on at this point is the fact that Heidi's body was found in the trunk. That suggests to me that she was transported to this other residence in the trunk, not alive. Just another thing I want to highlight from his previous statement, just that when he was talking about Heidi making lunch, that also seemed to be odd just the fact that he's talking about the morning and he's seems to be thinking about kind of lunchtime, and the kitchen and kind of making a meal. That that seemed odd. And besides that, what I've also pointed out, him describing himself as single. This friend of Heidi's apparently was a friend of 24 years. And when you just go on Heidi's Facebook, you can see it's a time when everyone is getting married, having children, and so one can see how someone falling out of that almost competition of being married, happily married, having children, having happy families, might have designs and desires to get that, or to get rid of it if it wasn't working. While I've done a little bit of study on this case, specifically looking at the address where Heidi and Shane stayed, what I noticed just was the very dense urban fabric. There didn't seem to be very many options in terms of just ordinary undergrowth or water sources or anything like that. The setting was just very sort of caught in like a spider web of urban fabric, and so there didn't seem very much possibility for disposal of, if there were human remains, which I always thought there were. I just thought it was unlikely that someone would take the risk in that urban fabric. I did think a likely candidate might be the storage facility just off the highway, just a temporary sort of situation, and that would have been a little bit like what Scott Peterson did. So before this information came out, I thought that would be a good place to check, but it also does make sense that another vehicle could have been used, and just like Scott Peterson, the remains have been taken a great distance from Heidi's home. Just a final point I want to make, this whole idea of the furniture removals thing, I still don't think it's irrelevant here. When people move home, they tend to move their furniture also over a great distance. So in this respect, one can also see a similarity in moving, in this case human beings, a great distance from one house to another. And that also just, to me, fits in with the psychology of moving things from one house to another. Again, we don't know what the true situation is, and people should be seen as innocent until proven guilty. However, at this point, there is now a dead body. Someone's responsible. The question is it one person? Is it two? Is it more than two? Thank you for listening, and True Crime Rocket Science will be providing updates to this story as they break.